Welcome everyone, I am Adeshawa Josh and this is Africa Matters. After 2 years of a deadly civil war, the Ethiopian government and Tigray People's Liberation Front agreed to stop fighting. But will a truce hold this time around? And in Kenya, we meet a community providing a lifeline to wildlife desperately in need of water. We'll also look at how some Somalis are finding new ways of growing food during the worst drought to hit the country in 40 years. After days of intense negotiations, the Ethiopian government and the rebel Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, have agreed yet again to cease hostilities. The African Union brokered peace deal marks a significant step towards ending the 2-year conflict that has killed hundreds of thousands of people and unleashed a humanitarian crisis. A previous truce was breached in August, months after both sides committed to it. Both parties signed a deal in Pretoria, where they agreed to disarm, restore law and order, resume services, and allow unfettered access of humanitarian aid into the Tigray region. Negotiators from both sides say they hope this deal will translate into reality and end a brutal chapter of their nation's history.
Towards rebuilding communities affected by this conflict, the level of destruction is immense, and thus that needs are massive. We thank our brothers from the other side also for their constructive engagement to allow the country to put this tragic period of conflict behind us. It is now for all of us to honor this agreement. We must be true to the letter and the spirit of this agreement. The people of Ethiopia expected more than the text of this agreement. They demand peace and harmony. They desire development. They have charted a promising and bright future.
Our people have been killed not only through bullets, but also for lack of food and medicine. Our children do not go to schools. Our hospitals are not functional because of the war. We have always felt this war was imposed on us, and we have always been ready to do everything in our power to stop this war. Now that we are here to sign an agreement, to at least explore the opportunity to see if we can make peace, and it is within reach. It will come as a relief not only to the people of Tigray, but also to the entire Ethiopian population.
The peace deal has brought cautious optimism back in Ethiopia. Millions of people there have felt the devastating impact of war in the country. The cost of the conflict is estimated at billions of dollars in military spending, lost investments, and damaged infrastructure. This is what some Ethiopians had to say as they marked 2 years since the civil war broke out.
The peace deal that was reached was through great sacrifice. We shouldn't lose more lives. We are brothers and sisters. We shouldn't be killing each other. I would be really happy if we had peace like before. God loves peace, and our country grows when there is peace. We can go everywhere when there is peace.
Let's hear more from Adem Kassie Abebe. He's an Ethiopian affairs analyst and the senior advisor at the International IDEA. He joins me from The Hague. Thank you so much for making time. Let's start with what makes this peace deal any different from the truce that failed in August.
So the truce was unilateral. So each side essentially announced that they would not pursue a military objective at that particular time. But this time it is signed, both parties have agreed, there will be monitors from the African Union and also from the parties themselves. And so this is if you will, the first serious effort towards peace in the country.
And it's a pretty detailed document. Does the African Union have the capacity to monitor the deal?
It is detailed, perhaps. At the same time, it also needs a lot to be implemented. So there's actually not sufficient details, including, for instance, in terms of the nature of the interim government in Tigray, the manner of disarmament, and other issues. But the African Union is providing support, it's providing facilitation role. So the primary responsibility of following up on the agreement would be for the parties. And so there will be African Union appointed experts, but there will be at the beginning about 10. And so they will not be able to cover the entire ground. And so the primary responsibility remains with the parties themselves and with the African Union essentially supporting and encouraging them to do the right thing.
Let's talk about the semantics of this agreement a little bit. You know, they're saying it's cessation of hostilities. Does this mean the end of the war? Is this a peace deal? And is there any difference between these three?
Well, so the cessation of hostilities primarily is about silencing the guns, and that has been agreed, but the agreement goes beyond that. It provides for how, including, for instance, the administration of the region, the division of responsibilities, around some responsibilities around security in Tigray, and other issues. And so the cessation of hostilities is primarily about silencing the guns, but the deal talks about political issues, including the representation of Tigray at the national level, manner of forming a transitional government in Tigray, and other issues. And so it's more detailed than a mere cessation of hostilities.
Now, do you think the peace deal will hold, given that Eritrea, which has been backing the Ethiopian government, was not part of the talks?
Yes, so the absence of Eritrea obviously is concerning. But at the same time, if you look at the details, particularly plans to disarm the fighters in Tigray, I think Eritrea will have enough guarantees from the Ethiopian side to agree to it. So there is still, I think, a lot of discussions that the Ethiopian government will have to have with the Eritrean counterparts. But I think the agreement provides sufficient guarantees to Ethiopia and to Eritrea to be able to accept the outcomes of it.
I don't know if you've read the document. You know, I had a chance to skim through it, and it is not unusual for certain elements on both sides to perhaps even breach it, not at the top, but perhaps, you know, soldiers who mutiny soldiers, if you like, just breach some of the terms of this contract. How do you see both sides deal with it in this kind of situation?
Well, indeed. So I think, you know, one of the responsibilities of both sides is first to sell this agreement to their fighters, to their political constituencies. And that's partly, I think, you know, you may have seen they provide some tight schedules, you know, very tight timelines. And considering the need to sell these things to their constituencies, indeed, they may need more time than prescribed in the agreement. But again, I think I believe that both sides, the parties that have signed into this agreement, have the support of their constituencies, have the mandate. Obviously, particularly on the Tigrayan side, some constituencies are not happy about the outcome. But I think the TPLF and the Ethiopian government on both sides have the control of their constituencies, of their armed forces, to be able to pursue it. Now, it doesn't mean there will not be, you know, there's guarantee against any skirmish, against any violations. But I think overall we can expect these leaders to sell the agreement to their constituencies and lead to proper implementation.
This is an important part to look out for, selling the idea, the peace deal to their constituents. Finally, before I let you go, if the peace deal holds, what will it mean for the millions of people who have been caught right in the middle of this conflict in Tigray, in Afar, and Amhara, and other regions?
It's a massive relief, and they deserve it. The millions of people in Tigray, in Amhara, and in Afar in particular, but I would say across the country, have been suffering from the consequences of this war, direct and indirect. And so I think it must come as a massive relief for everyone in the affected areas, but I think broadly to the people of Ethiopia and the world.
Adem Kassie Abebe, Senior Advisor at International IDEA, thank you so much for speaking to Africa Matters.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
But as one of the deadliest conflicts in the Horn of Africa is being resolved, fighting is escalating in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The M23 rebel group, allegedly backed by Rwanda, resumed its latest brutal offensive in the North Kivu province last month. This year alone, the UN estimates nearly 900,000 people have fled from attacks by armed groups. In mid-October, the M23 militants took new territories in North Kivu. They captured much of Rushuru territory, including Kiwanja, along the strategic highway that leads to the provincial capital Goma near the Rwandan border. The rebels also recently captured the eastern military base of Rumangabo, forcing the United Nations peacekeeping mission to make what they called a strategic withdrawal. Meanwhile, thousands of people rallied in the eastern city of Goma to protest against Kigali's alleged backing of the M23 rebels. The demonstrators, many of them young men, chanted slogans demanding the Rwandan President Paul Kagame keep out of the country's internal affairs. Kinshasa has expelled the Rwandan ambassador. Rwanda denies backing the M23, and both countries have accused each other of sponsoring armed groups. On Wednesday, Kenyan President William Ruto announced he is deploying more than 900 military personnel to the DRC. The soldiers will join a new regional force set up in April by leaders of the East African community to restore peace and security in the DRC. This comes after multiple calls by both the African Union and the UN for dialogue have failed to de-escalate tensions. Still to come on Africa Matters.
I am Ali Abdurrahman in Mogadishu. I'll explain to you how Somali agricultural engineers are trying to tackle the country's food security crisis by using greenhouse technology.
I'm Victoria Amunga, and I'll tell you how communities around conservation areas like this one are helping wildlife to survive Kenya's persistent drought.
We go to Somalia now, which is currently struggling with its worst droughts in 40 years. In recent years, university students have introduced farming techniques that use modern technology. Researchers say this could allow the country to be more self-sufficient and even reduce poverty. Ali Abdurrahman filed this report from Mogadishu.
It's a longer day ahead. 28-year-old Abdel Fattah Abdullahi and his team are busy cultivating one of the first greenhouse farms in the country just outside Mogadishu, and they are expanding production with the help of the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency.
We started greenhouses in 2016 with few vegetables. Since then, we are getting ready to increase our production. We are planting new crops, including strawberries imported from Turkey and potatoes from Ethiopia as well. In the future, we want our production to reach across Somalia and beyond.
Agricultural engineers are trying to reshape Somalia's farming sector by using new technology to improve production and fight food insecurity.
We are at the final stage of experimenting with a new type of maize which was used in the country in the 1970s. It is better quality than the normal one and is easy to grow. I encourage business people to invest in the farming sector. It's a booming industry. We trained farmers to use viable technology to increase production.
Somalia is facing severe food shortages caused by recurrent droughts. It is also one of the most food insecure countries in the world, and almost everything imported. Greenhouse technology might offer a solution.
We get clean and fresh vegetables from greenhouses nearby. They are healthier and cheaper than those imported from outside. Now we have different fruits and vegetables here, most of them locally grown. Affordable prices and fresh fruits are something amazing. We didn't have this before. Our customers like the local fruits and vegetables because they are clean and undamaged.
And though limited access to proper equipment and information is holding back many Somalis from investing in the farming industry, more greenhouse farming could help provide a steady food supply for the millions of people facing hunger. Ali Abdurrahman, Africa Matters, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Across East Africa, people are struggling to survive after 3 years without proper rainfall. According to the UN's World Food Programme, close to 20 million people in the region are facing starvation. Regan Devine has more with this report about how people are surviving in the rural town of Ituri in Kenya.
Dennis Musia wakes up early every morning to prepare his traps. He leaves his home a few hundred kilometers east of the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, with the hopes of bringing home game. But Musia doesn't hunt as a hobby. For him, it's a matter of survival. The drought has brought with it rising prices and food shortages, making even basic commodities a luxury.
A kilo of maize is going for 100 shillings, and a litre of cooking oil is 400 shillings. So in a day, I'm supposed to spend 500 shillings.
Unable to bring home bread from the market, Musi is forced to resort to the methods of his ancestors, hunting and gathering.
But because that budget is impossible for now, I venture into the forest scavenging for whatever is available. May it be gazelle, hare, honey badger, antelope, or any animal snared by my trap. In case I don't get any, I pass by the wild fruits like baobab and collect some so that we can boil them and just fill the stomach.
He's not the only one. Many people in the region are eating whatever they can find. At this point, Musi is just making sure his family does not go to sleep on an empty stomach.
Now, we no longer seek to meet our dietary requirements. Whatever my husband brings from the forest is what we eat. We just boil and eat what's there at the end of the day. We are waiting for the rains, and if they fail, we have no other option. And worst still, we don't have any seeds to plant.
The drought has made growing crops a futile exercise, and finding food from surrounding wildlife is a daily struggle. The World Food Programme says malnutrition is as much of a problem as starvation.
So we find situations where people reduce the intake, amount of food they take in, which impacts on their health and also nutrition. We find people starting to pick on certain foods, basically to fill the tummy rather than also provide the nutrition requirements. And also people resorting to trying to access different sorts of food, like, getting food from the wild or hunting wild game, which they've not done before.
They say the number of people seeking emergency assistance in the region has grown by millions in the last couple of years, and survival for many people here has become a game of chance. Regan Devine, Africa Matters.
We stay in Kenya, where the severe drought is bringing humans closer to nature. Wild herds are being forced to leave their habitats to seek new watering holes. But communities whose economy and livelihoods are dependent on these animals have come up with new solutions to ensure everyone's survival. Victoria Amunga reports from the rangelands of southern Kenya.
Lumo Conservancy in Kenya's Taita Taveta County is home to a diverse animal population. But the prolonged drought in the country is starving wildlife here of their natural water and food sources. Herds have begun to roam further away in a desperate search for water and pasture. That's alarmed people like Ludovica Malemba, a sergeant in this community conservancy that relies on tourism for its income.
This is very dry. We cannot farm. We only depend on this wildlife. This is what earns us a living. We get jobs here, so if these animals die, we will have to go back home and the community will suffer.
In August, residents here began an initiative to keep the wild animals close by supplying them with drinking water. The water is drawn from a community borehole and sent to troughs in the conservancy every week, and it's paying off.
Since we started providing water to animals, I have seen them begin to return. They had started moving away to the neighboring areas. There is a river there. They were moving there for the water. But since we started providing water here, they are coming back, and they are many.
Keeping wild animals in their normal territory is also important for nearby herders who've seen their livestock targeted by hungry predators.
For example, I have goats. I cannot lock them inside, nor can I take them to graze. They will not have enough, so we let them go free. If they go and come back, we thank God. If they could go and never return, then you will find that they were killed by a lion or a hyena.
According to the Africa Wildlife Foundation, the climate change crisis is to blame for the changes threatening Kenya's environment. Concerted efforts from both local and international actors are needed to restore balance.
Let's start seeing resources set for what they are meant to do. Resources for the people to build their ability to mitigate the climate crisis. If we say we want to protect our rangeland, we cannot protect them without resources.
But time is running out. More than 100 elephants have died at Kenya's largest national park this past year alone. And severe drought has persisted in Kenya for the last 4 years. Analysts say this year is the worst yet. No one knows when the rains will come or if it will come at all, and each passing day is a struggle for survival for humans and animals alike. Victoria Amunga, Africa Matters, Kenya.
From droughts to floods, Chad is being plagued with extreme weather events. After a prolonged drought season, it's now seeing its heaviest seasonal rainfall in over 30 years. The rain should come as a relief, but it's bringing locals face to face with different problems. Yunus Emre has more.
Fatima Chari performs a daily task that's vital to her family's survival. She struggles to squeeze the last drops of milk, but the yield from her 6 cows is much less than it used to be.
As you've just seen, I tried to milk 6 cows, but I've not managed to get even 1 litre. They're stressed, sick and malnourished because of the drought and the floods. The herds travelled over 2,000 kilometres in a few days to escape the humidity of the floods, and it's difficult for the cows to produce milk for us in these conditions.
Chari and her group of nomads herd close to 500 cattle, and they usually roam over 1,000 kilometres within a year. But the extremely heavy rainfall has forced them to cover that distance in just 3 months. As nomads, their survival depends on the well-being of their livestock, and they're struggling to find fertile lands for grazing. The humidity has become unbearable, and the excess rain has left farmlands and pastures underwater, forcing herders to flee in search of grazing lands.
We've traveled many kilometers to get away from the humidity, but we ended up in a dry area where there is no pasture or water for the herds. The cattle are sick, and we have no treatment. Also, the corridors for us to travel are narrowing because of new villages being created and agricultural areas that are expanding. We need the authorities to help us with cattle feed and food for us too. We're overwhelmed.
Before the floods, authorities estimated that almost a third of the Chadian population was facing food insecurity. Now, that number is expected to rise even higher.
According to the 2021 harmonization framework, the March projections and updates this year, we were expecting 2 million or more people in a phase 3 food insecurity situation, which is an acute phase of food insecurity. So when you take the whole thing together, you can go up to 5 million people in need of food assistance.
The nomads are doing their best to keep their livestock healthy. But with some of the country underwater and the rest still in drought, the land they depend on has become one big rough patch. Yunus Emre, Africa Matters.
To Nigeria now, where a local business is turning electronic waste into solar lanterns as a way to fight energy shortages and the climate crisis. The company says the idea is filling a gap in the market and is contributing to a growing Pan-Africa effort to go green. Dominic Bryan Omondi has the story.
It's lighting the way for many small and medium businesses in Nigeria. And it's cheap and climate-friendly answer to fill a burgeoning demand.
So we would have tried to do other complex devices, maybe something that has to do with security systems, something. But if you look at the target market, right, we decided to do things that will be affordable and has a more pressing need.
A lantern that runs on solar power and utilizes Africa's electronic waste. The company powers the lanterns with lithium batteries from discarded old laptops. They also collect used wires, screws, and screens, which they use for the casing of the solar units. A single lamp costs $32 and comes with a year-long warranty.
Small business need, one way or the other, you need electricity to function. Even if maybe you are doing a software as a service, or you're doing a service-based business or product-based business, even if you're a baker, you're a carpenter, whatever it is you're doing, you need electricity, right? So it's very important for electricity to help keep a business running and productive.
With the chronic power cuts in Nigeria, coupled with the rising cost of energy, these environmentally friendly lanterns are bringing a glimmer of hope to many Nigerians with just a flick of a switch. Dominic Bryan Omondi, Africa Matters.
This week, we'll take you to Mopti, a town in eastern Mali. It's recently been in the news over a spike in terror attacks, but the town was once renowned for its unique religious building, the Grand Mosque of Jener. It's the largest mud-built structure in the world. Now, let's take a look. That's our show for this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode, or ideas on what you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle @AdeshawaJosh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and share. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you next week.